Hey there, I am Reverend Dan. We are the Soul Evolution Collaborative, and this is Stripped Down Sunday, where we unchurch your Sunday experience. So welcome. We are thrilled to have this time with you to offer some inspiration, some spiritual upliftment, and hopefully a new take on life in a very uniquely Soul Evolution Collaborative kind of way. We have stripped down Sunday mornings to offer you a streamlined experience that fits your needs. We have this strong desire to bring an updated message of inspiration to the world at a time when it seems like we all might need it the most. The Soul Evolution Collaborative is dedicated to personal transformation and communal evolution. So 2 very quick logistics before we jump into the message. Everything that you could possibly want to know about the Soul Evolution Collaborative, if you happen to be new here or simply continuing your journey, all of that info can be found at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. So open up another tab, poke around. There's plenty of stuff to do and find to help further you on your journey. And second, it is communities with missions like ours that actually bring change to the world. And we believe we are very quickly doing that we are actually bringing change to people's lives. And so if you believe that you can support this mission, if you believe in this mission and you are capable of giving financially to support this mission in any way, or know somebody else who is, you can make donation at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. There is a donation button right in the menu. And so we greatly appreciate those gifts. Every donation is tax deductible, as we are an outreach of the Orlando Center for Spiritual Living, and big news, soon to be our own member affiliated community of Centers for Spiritual Living. So that's kind of fun. But let's jump right in here to the message, the reason we are all here. So I don't have a big, fun, exciting opening line this week like I try to usually most weeks. But what was really interesting this week, kind of a funny story, it came to my attention a few days ago because I am giving this message in more than one place. Came to my attention that apparently there is actually more than one global theme title floating around this week. We are part of the Centers for Spiritual Living, and that organization has global themes that centers all over the world use every week. And so we participate in that. And so in conversation with people at another center where I will be giving this talk, like, oh, that's not the title. And what was really interesting about that is that the title that came to me first, this is the divine perfection of the universe. The title that made its way to me first is actually the title that helped me find this like divine hidden wisdom in it that was looking to come out through it, which I don't think the other title necessarily would have. And so it's this like perfect circle back to, so maybe it doesn't matter what the title is, but the title got me to the point that we're going to be talking about. And so the title that came to me that I'm kind of going to talk about, and actually it doesn't really matter what the title was because I totally wanted to change it to something completely different anyway, which I'll tell you in a second. But the title that came to me is, Can I See the God in Me? And what was really interesting about this is I ended up typing this title in a number of scenarios and moments throughout the week. And every time I typed it, my fingers wanted to, and then of course did type a lowercase g in the word God. And I see the God in me, but lowercase g. And I thought that's so weird. And so if I had found the other title, or if the other title had found its way to me first, I certainly wouldn't have come to this point where I realized, like, I don't know, the 5th or 6th time in that, wow, every time I type this, I am typing a lowercase g on the word God, which is very different from, in my mind at least, is very different than capital G God and the meaning behind that. What do we bring with it? And it really got me thinking about it. What does it mean to see one God, to see God in oneself, obviously, but also what is it what does it mean when we say the word God? What do we mean by God with a capital G? And how does that change if we say God with a lowercase g? And then all of these unconscious beliefs kind of started bubbling to the surface. And so it was really interesting to kind of go through this experience all week long. And so we're going to jump into that kind of head first a little bit, or dive feet first into the deep end, whatever expression you want to use there. But so the global theme for this month of February is the inner life, which is totally perfect for all of the questions that came up for me around this title. And as I said, that the topic for this week is, can I see the God in me? So we are invited this month, and specifically this week, to remember that not only am I one with Spirit, but that the Spirit that I'm one with is actually all that I am. And to take that a step further, that Spirit is all that there is, that everything I see or think is Spirit, which is great, because that's totally not what comes up when when I ask myself the question, can I see the God in me? And the first time this week that I consciously paused to ask this question, it was fascinating, because the very first response, the first several responses really that came up, were old beliefs. I mean, beliefs that I haven't thought about, that haven't come up for me probably in a couple of years already. And they were all of these worthiness issues. You can't call yourself God. You can't. I'm like, what? And so the title that I really wanted to give this message this week, being from New Jersey, and we kind of have this Northeast, I don't know, edge. Let's call it an edge. So with this New Jersey Northeast edge, the thing that I really wanted to call is like, who do you think you are? I mean, that really is the message this week. Who do you think you are? And that was certainly the tone that came up with these old beliefs. And it was interesting, because this time around, it was very different from when, for the several years that I had spent unpacking those through schooling and training and whatnot. And it was interesting to see those things come up again, because they did come up differently. There was kind of this distance to it where I could step back and look and like, oh, I don't really think that, but there is somewhere that belief still lives subconsciously in the ethers, that is not actually my belief, but it's one that I've been exposed. It's no longer my belief, but it's a belief that I've been exposed to. And so somewhere there is that old pattern that we have broken, that's the residual of which still exists to some extent. Who do you think you are to see God in yourself? Which is such I want to say an old school belief, and yet it's super common across our society. Super common for the guilt, the shame, the worthiness, all of that to come up in that, whether it's your first time, your second time, your 10th or 1,000th time asking a question like that, to see the God in oneself. So I think the first thing we are being called to here is to really unpack the baggage, the story that we have around all of this, and kind of explore our language a little bit. And so three things came up to me that need unpacking. God. What do we mean by God? What does it mean to see God in oneself? What does it mean to see that? And then in me. What does it mean for that to be in me? And I think our language is super important, right? Because we have to explore what did we mean by that? So what did we mean when we did believe that voice that comes up that says, who do you think you are? What did that version of ourself mean when we said God with a capital G? And I suppose what difference would there be if we said God with a lowercase g? And then what do we mean now when we say it? What do we mean now? What do we want to mean now when we say God with a capital G or a lowercase g. What is God? What do we mean by God when we say it now? And so I think just real quick, this version of God, I think we have this old school version of God, which is the elder, usually male figure, kind of like in a throne in the clouds with a long white beard, doling out punishments and blessings and grace and judgments. So there is that God, that old God, that's the old version for me, and I think that's very common for a lot of people. The new version, I don't know that the word God, for me personally, ever does justice for this new version of the everything, right? So there is this thing that we don't really have words for, that we can't possibly fathom all of. It is infinite, and it is everything and everywhere. And it is inside of itself and beyond itself. It is the physical form and that which is not in the physical form. It is the whole universe, and then that which was, let's say, prior to the creation of the universe, however that could be. It is that thing that would require what we might call a miracle to exist. And so when I see the word God with a capital G, apparently there is still a belief in me that ties that to a smaller version, maybe not directly the man in the clouds version, but to a smaller version than the infinite. And so it's really important that we redefine our words. And so when we look at this question to see God, well, what are we looking for? And that's totally a personal thing, right? When we ask, what can I see God? Can I see the infinite in me? What are we really looking for? And then what does it mean for it to be in me? Is it maybe as me? Is in me dualistic? Can it be out there and in here at the same time? Is there a difference? And so I think unpacking questions like this really can give us certainly more questions, but also some more clarity. And maybe a better question to ask would be, can I see the all that there is as me? And I think one of the things that come up once we begin to redefine our words is we probably start to realize it's a whole lot easier to see the divine in everybody else, or possibly the everybody else that we like, or maybe even anybody else. Maybe it's just easier to see the divine in anyone else before we see it in ourselves. And so that can be a tool. It certainly seems like, well, if I can see it out there, I should be able to see it in myself. But we don't need to beat ourselves up over that. I think that's just the natural progression. So for a moment, if you are willing to do so, I want you to just close your eyes and imagine a baby picture of yourself. This is something that was brought up in a meeting the other night, and I just thought it was so brilliant. Imagine this baby picture, your favorite baby picture of yourself. And imagine that baby, that child, as the divine, as the all that there is, as pure spirit and perfect. And for whatever reason, that seems so much easier, I think, for most of us. I mean, maybe that this is not true for everyone due to whatever circumstances, but for me, it is so much easier to see the divine in that child, in any child really, than it is. I mean, even for adults, I think in our culture we have a bias towards the perfection of children. We don't want to ruin them, but different day, different message. But to see, you can open your eyes, by the way, but to see the divine in that baby picture, in that picture of that child, and then to realize that child is exactly who we are today, that there's really no difference. And even if you can't, even if there's, even if you're not there, if there's a spectrum of things in the way, or thoughts that come up, there is some part of our minds that understands, seeing a picture of a child, we have this innate and inherent desire to view that child as perfect. And so even just to play that game with our minds for a minute, to recognize, yeah, we were that at one point. And at some point we started piling on beliefs that made us think we are not that thing. And so really what we're talking about is wholeness. Wholeness. And I think, again, it's important to redefine our words, because wholeness, for many of us, tends to mean perfectionism, like without flaw. We are perfect without any flaw. We should be absolutely perfect. And maybe that comes from our view of children. I don't know. But I think we must redefine those deep-seated beliefs in ourselves so that we understand wholeness in the new thought perspective. From the new thought perspective does not mean perfectionism. It does not mean without flaw, or what we would see in our past beliefs as flaw. What it does mean is that we are including all of the pieces. We are including that which seems imperfect to us. Oneness must include all, or else it's not oneness, the all that there is, right? If we have oneness, it must include the all that there is, or else it's not oneness. We can't have oneness that excludes these pieces, because now we have two separate things. So for there to be oneness, we have to have wholeness, in this idea that it includes all of that which we see, as we define for ourselves, as imperfect. So we are kind of back to our baggage, our story. What are we bringing to the table? What do we believe about wholeness? What do we believe about ourselves? What do we believe about oneness? And then what are we actually saying about it? Right? So much of the world around us has beliefs and views that are so heavily based in this Judeo-Christian God of duality, good and evil, right and wrong, wholeness and brokenness, oneness and otherness, right? And so that's clearly not us, right? But even that idea, well, there's us and them. Yikes. Yet our language so often says something very different from this thing, this idea, this belief that we say we have. And honestly, that's okay. I think it seems like it shouldn't be okay. It seems like it shouldn't be okay to say we have this belief and then outpicture as something totally different. So when we pay attention to our language, it actually becomes our barometer that points us back to our work. And so that's how we have this wholeness, this idea that all of it, even that which we previously may have pictured or desired to be outside of our perfect sense of oneness, all of that comes back into wholeness, into oneness, right? When we pay attention to our language, that becomes our work. That is the measure of, are we acting, are we speaking, are we thinking in alignment with that which we say we believe? And so it's really easy to beat oneself up over this. And so I'm suggesting we, to the best of our ability, try not to do that and make it as simple as, I said this, so I must look at this. I thought wholeness meant perfectionism, so now I must look at what my belief is around being perfect. And for me personally, growing up, society said, because you can be anything you want, you should be perfect, right? There is this perfectionism in needing to be the best, needing to outperform, needing to, I don't know, whatever. The list goes on and on and on. I thought wholeness meant perfectionism. Oh, right. Childhood said, but that's not what I think. So if I keep reinforcing a new belief, I don't actually think that is true. There's still a part of me that believes that is true. I don't actually think that is true. So then I get to rework my belief by continually reinforcing this idea that that old belief is not true. And so we get to ask these other questions about ourselves. Is there room in life for what I deem as mistakes or flaws? Can I not look at those things as mistakes or flaws, but simply look at those things as that which redirects us, right? Excuse me. Do I want to believe that wholeness meant perfection? Do I want to believe that? Can I redefine that into something new? Can I redefine wholeness? Can wholeness mean inclusive of? Can I get to the point of seeing wholeness as meaning inclusivity rather than exclusivity? And that is simply just by reaffirming every time it comes up. And when we do this more often, it actually becomes faster. Can I reaffirm, this old thought is coming up. Okay, the sooner I recognize it, the sooner I can get myself to creating a new thought, a new neural pathway, a new belief around, right, wholeness is oneness. So there is very often when we quote people, we quote Ernest Holmes, who is the person who is responsible for bringing together all of these universal principles throughout the teachings, throughout history, into a book that we call The Science of Mind, which became this philosophy. A lot of what he found and studied was influenced by a man named Thomas Troward, who was actually a judge in India. He wrote a lot about metaphysics. And in his Edinburgh lectures, which has turned into a book, he outlines so brilliantly so much of what this teaching is based on. And he is responsible for me greatly understanding this teaching in many ways. And so this is one of my favorite quotes of his that speaks exactly to what we're talking about here. He says, "You cannot have two infinities, for then neither would be infinite. Each would be limited by the other. Nor can you split the infinite up into fractions. The infinite is mathematical, essential unity." Oh, right. Like it seems so obvious then. For anything to be infinite, everything would have to be. For anything to be like the infinite, the all that there is, for it to be anything, if we believe in it at all, it has to be everything. Like just from the standpoint of math, we can't divide up the infinite. And so every time that thing in our brain kicks in that's wired to see separation, in order for us, intentionally, in order for us to have this experience at all, we just have to, instead of either avoiding that thing or seeing that thing as bad, we just have to retrain ourselves to recognize that thing as the barometer, that which is pointing us back towards this alignment, this wholeness, this oneness, that, yeah, we are here as individualities, but not separate from. And so, like I said a moment ago, we're not here to blame ourselves or beat ourselves up for this. We all have thoughts, ideas, beliefs that we did not consciously decide on or choose, right? That picture of that child in our mind is that old version of perfect. It's also the new version of perfect. But we have that old version of perfect where we, as adults, think we have piled on stuff that ruins us as adults, stories and things that we have to work through. And yet all of those things that the experiences that those children have, those babies have, is exactly what turns out to be their purpose here, right? We all go through stories that turn out to be, when we address them and work through the stories we have around it, those experiences become our greatest gifts, become our purpose, become our drive and our passion. And so what would we be without those things? So we're not here to take on blame, because there's really nothing wrong with having the thoughts and the beliefs and the experiences that we came up with. And it is our responsibility to recognize our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs, our values, that when they do come up, that we kind of put them to the test and say, I hold this belief somewhere in me. Is it mine, or is it something that was given to me? Have I picked it up along the way? Is it something that just exists in the collective consciousness that I could actually help kind of weed out of that collective consciousness? So we do all have our own responsibilities for handling, dealing with, recognizing, working through all of those beliefs, like wholeness, like perfectionism. What do we want that to mean now? So really, today's question, who do you think you are, comes all the way back around to what values, how do we view ourselves? How do we view our issues or thoughts or beliefs around worthiness, shame, blame, guilt, any of those things that we've picked up along the way? And so we actually get to come back around to asking, do you believe you are God? With a capital G. Does that have a specific meaning and story to it? Do you believe you are the all that there is? Do you believe that the very same thought that created the entire multiverse is in fact the same thought that is thinking and moving as you? Yes, of course, right? Of course we do. And then we must ask, do my words and actions mirror that belief? Maybe not always. And so we rinse and repeat. We are back to the beginning again. Am I worthy? Yes. My mind tells me yes. Do I still have story around that? Do I immediately and automatically believe I'm worthy, or do I have residual thoughts that I might even in the slightest bit not be? Well, I think it would be natural that there are past beliefs that have residual mechanisms, kind of these hollowed mechanisms of beliefs previously weeded out. You can't take a block out of the foundation of a building and expect it to stand. So what we have done is weeded out that which is no longer true about that belief and tried to fill it in with what is now true. And so there is maybe still residual hollowed structure that we are working through, or maybe there's new blocks that we haven't found before. And then we ask, so am I worthy? How do we feel about being worthy? Do I see myself and my life as whole? Well, I think so, except for maybe the times that I don't. Okay, so are those things true? The times that I don't see myself as whole, are those things absolutely true? No. And so we are now reframing and reaffirming for ourselves. And so how can I change my words and my actions to better reflect my desired beliefs? Well, we must then redefine. So again, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? We can ask this question in a very different way. Who do you think you are? Can you see God in you? Can you see the all that there is, everything that you have ever known or experienced as you, and you are it? And so today we are obviously talking about wholeness, that everything that interrupts us from recognizing ourselves as the all that there is actually doing so in order to point us back to our true self in a more intentional and conscious way. And when we continue to see our own wholeness on a deeper and deeper level, we are actually doing our part for the greater good, for the greater humanity. And then, at that point, we begin to see the world around us change and awaken to its true humanity. So who do you think you are?